Hello, I'm Donal McCauley, and welcome to medicsvoices.com, where we talk to the key opinion leaders in healthcare and medicine around the world. Today we're in London, and I'm talking to Rich Taunt. Rich, now, you have enormous experience in healthcare, and the NHS in the UK used to be held up as the model for healthcare. Things aren't looking too good at the moment.
I think there are still parts of the NHS which absolutely should be held up as the model, but absolutely bits are creaking and in need of a good look at and probably a good overhaul.
Now, I saw you wrote that the NHS will die. Tell me a little bit about how you see the life cycle of the NHS.
Unless we can have a very different sort of conversation about those factors, those fears we have for the NHS, which often are felt but not said, I think there is pretty grave danger.
So in terms of this lifetime in the NHS, I mean, we all have to change in our lifetime. What would you change? Where the changes need to happen?
The first of these factors, the first reason why the NHS may pass away is simply youth. And so we talk a lot about the impact of an aging population on health systems around the world. The bigger factor than older people needing care for the NHS will be that young people simply don't want to work for it any longer. We're already seeing a generational shift in how people think about work, with more people being interested in the well-being offered by their employer, the ethics of their leaders, than other factors. And it's not looking too good for the NHS and the organisations which make up our health system. The fact that 30% of NHS staff often think about leaving, the fact that 1 in 7 UK trained doctors now practice overseas, with working environment being top of their list for looking elsewhere, are causes to think about, have we prioritized sufficiently creating the environments in which staff want to work? And actually, when we have what is arguably one of the most centralized health systems in the developed world, how can we create workplaces where people are empowered and able to tap into their intrinsic motivation for wanting to work in health in the first place, rather than where we often end up, which is a system which can feel incredibly pressurized, incredibly micromanaged by various levels of hierarchy, and actually take people away from why people choose to go into healthcare in the first place.
One of the factors you mentioned that's changing is the aging population. Now, I'm a lot older than you, but who's going to look after me?
There will always be a greater demand for healthcare workers. So I think globally, I think there needs to be a pretty big recruitment drive. I think we talk about 19 million jobs in health needed by 2030. So how healthcare is an attractive profession for people who are currently working in healthcare and are thinking about whether they stay or not, or looking to join, has to be, in my opinion, at the top of every health system's to-do list. If people think that actually, no, I'm not going to do this, the working environment is not one which gives me personal joy, I'm going to look outside healthcare, health gets into a real problem. Because we want to have more health, we are going to need more health because of demographic factors. But crucially, we are wanting to be cared for in new and absolutely right ways, but it carries with it the need for a lot of people who are willing to do jobs which in a lot of areas, including the NHS, look increasingly unattractive.
Yeah, I mean, getting the people is difficult. The other thing is paying the people. So can we really afford the healthcare that we would like?
Once again, every system will be pushing against a barrier of how much can we spend, what do we want to spend our money on. I think for me, the important point to remember is that the healthcare we receive today in any developed country is innumerably better than 20 years ago. It's sort of incredibly better than 40 or 50 years ago. but it still will be, in 50 years' time, judged to be inadequate. So every age is looking at their healthcare system saying, we've got an issue with the budget we have, how much can we possibly do? Within the NHS, the role of politicians is so central that they're in a position where they can make or break change. And currently, we are in a position where I think there could be a bit more honesty about the realism as to what a health service can and can't provide. We are probably 18 months away from an election, or we almost certainly are 18 months away from an election, where there will be an opportunity to see different visions put forward by politicians. And we are already starting to see some debate there about what is necessary for the NHS to flourish, both in terms of resources, but also in terms of change. So I think politicians do play a particular role within the NHS. But I think where we get stuck is that we normally conflate political leadership with politicians having all the answers. And so I think part of this honesty has to be politicians who say change is required, but we do not have all of the answers ourselves, and we need to work with the population. We need to use sort of new methods. We're particular fans here at Kaleidoscope of methods from deliberative democracy, citizens' juries, for example. We need to work with our population in new and creative ways to deal with some of these tensions and trade-offs where there is no easy answer. It's not that we just need to scour the numerous healthcare journals to find the perfect health system. There are real trade-offs here which require a level of understanding and sensitivity, but also diversity of opinion. And so how we best work with diverse groups, diverse perspectives, to get to a place which is it's not going to be perfect. And I think we should be honest about that, but is a darn sight better than where we could otherwise be.
You mentioned something that caught my imagination there, and that's consulting with the people on the ground. Is this a kind of a people's parliament, a discussion group? Is this people deciding the priorities for health? Where would you see that? Is that an opportunity?
So the really exciting development, I think, in sort of public engagement and public consultation is actually sort of going well beyond consultation and actually thinking about how can you equip people, representative groups of people, to lead debate rather than just respond to it. And so the use of citizens' juries, increasingly around the world in areas such as climate change, in terms of abortion law in Ireland, offers real hope in terms of how you can actually have people supplied with all of the right evidence, supplied with information, supplied with differences of view, and being able to say, given all of this, as a representative group of the population, this is our set of recommendations. That's a very different model to the government writing down some clever thoughts in a PDF and sending it to people saying, respond by next Thursday, please. So it is a different type of conversation, which I think is at the heart of how we actually move to a different settlement, a different sort of health service.
One of the issues that people, the population, are concerned about at the moment, and they're certainly very vocal, are primary care services. It looks like it's going to be impossible to meet the needs or the wants of the population.
I think in primary care, we're so often stuck in a bit of a black hole in terms of you don't have to have been around in health for very long to see the same arguments come round and the same promises come round and the same realization that those promises haven't been met come round, and we all go around again. And so you can look back. One of my wonderful colleagues here at Kaleidoscope, David Haslam, was reflecting just this week on a piece which he wrote 20 years ago about crisis in general practice, where you can just cut and paste and put it straight back into today and just sort of increase some of the volume of certain sentiments. So there is a need for a level of reflexivity as to how are we still in this same place? What's actually going on under the surface, which we're not dealing with? And I think for me, part of that would be to say, we have been talking for decades if not longer, about how we need to rebalance our health service in favour of primary care, how we need to rebalance our medic numbers in favour of general practice. But it's not gone there. What are actually some of the very deep underlying factors which are causing behaviour to continue in the same way, despite us saying, no, we don't want this, we don't want this, we do want to do something different, but then it doesn't happen. So I think a moment of pause to consider why, when we've been in this place before, has change not happened, and are we focusing on the right issues rather than jumping to easy sound bites or what looks like the real concern, well, actually it really may not be.
Now, you mentioned David Haslam there, and of course, David was at one time chair of NICE, and NICE was brought in to have a buffer between healthcare and industry. That buffer seems to be being eroded at the minute. Where do you see the future of the relationship between healthcare and industry, particularly the pharma industry?
So I think NICE has been phenomenally successful, and I think you can see that in a number of different ways in terms of how it's transformed certain dynamics within the English health service, in terms of how it is a model which has been used and sort of copied in numerous health systems around the globe. This does go back to the potential for healthcare will always be greater than the ability to pay for it in the UK, but also in any health service. That is a dynamic which we're always going to live with. We are always going to have organisations which come up with new ways to extend life and the quality of life within it, which of course they're absolutely able to do. That is very different to having a publicly funded health service focusing on the right publicly funded services and treatments. So NICE was essential to create 25 years ago, and it's even more essential now to be able to make the sorts of decisions which are utterly necessary, but increasingly sensitive.
The other area that people talk about as potential answers to some of the healthcare problems is the use of technology. Do you see technology offering many answers?
I think technology will continue to offer huge potential and huge ways in which care can be improved. The issue is we then go, great, we'll have some more of that, please. I think there is this risk that we view healthcare as something which can be fulfilled, a computer game which can be completed. And so if we just get a bit of technology here, a bit of technology there, it will take us to that zenith, and we'll go, great, we've completed our health system. Now we can go and spend money on something else. Everything we know about health is that's not how it happens at all. And so we will use technology and it will do things which are wonderful, and we'll say, lovely, great, and what's next? So yes, absolutely, we should be thinking about all of the different ways which technology can be used. But let's not fool ourselves that once we've used this bit of technology, we won't want to use the next frontier after that.
Now, we've spoken about all the challenges and problems and limitations of healthcare. It would be really nice to finish on an optimistic note. Have you any optimistic thoughts for those of us who are trying to grapple with the problems of health in the future?
So I am incredibly optimistic, despite writing a piece which starts "The NHS will die," because healthcare is still, certainly in my opinion, the most wonderful industry anyone could want to be part of. The joy and privilege of being in an industry whose very purpose is to offer care and compassion and support to those who are vulnerable and in need. It takes some beating. And so the real advantage health has in terms of confronting the challenges in which it does is that this is something which people are intuitively, intrinsically drawn to. It's how we work with that intrinsic motivation. It's how we support people who really see their individual purpose aligning with a collective purpose, which is will have to be at the heart of how health in the UK and far beyond develops over the coming years, decades, centuries. This is a long game.
I love that thought of how we can align the individual motivation with the collective purpose. Rich, it's been fun talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you very much for your insights into healthcare policy and the future. Thank you.
Thanks so much.